So let me ask you something. Have you ever stayed in a season a little bit longer than you're supposed to? Not physically, but mentally. Almost like everything in life is shifting, but you're not. You you're slowed down, you're pulling back, you might even went silent. And at first the mode seemed to make sense to you and you needed that. But now it's March. Spring is on the way. And you're still moving a little bit like it's January. Let's talk about that. So welcome to Word Forward, y'all. Welcome to Word Forward, a place where we build structure and clarity in this noisy world. And this is episode 4. I think I'm getting the hang of this. And today we're talking about seasons, not weather seasons though. The physical ones, the personal ones, winter mode, right? And that's the hibernation habit and how to know when it's actually time to step back outside and get to it. I'm not gonna lie at all. There was a whole season of my life where I had to slow down, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. And not because I wanted to, it's because I had to, my body needed it. When you're forced to slow down like that, something happens to you mentally. You start hearing your thoughts clearer. You can't hide from the motion in the waves anymore. Like, you can't distract yourself with the surrounding noise that's going on. And winter strips that extra off of you. It starts to build roots. Let me break that down a little bit more. When everything looks quiet on the outside, and then the foundation, it starts to get built in the darkness, and you're not performing during that time. You're not trying to prove anything. You're not posting your every move to everyone. And it's a time that's spent mostly just building that strength and the stability you need, getting to learn who you are when nobody's clapping for you. That becomes your superpower. You can see what truly matters when those rooms go quiet, right? That's winter. Now, that's not weakness in you. It's the structural part of you that's trying to grow. That's an uncomfortable part of life, You don't build those roots to stay underground, though. You build roots so you can grow upward and out of the dark time, right? And sometimes we call that healing, but it also could just be comfort, And not always, though. Sometimes there's a difference between healing and hiding. And when you heal, you're preparing for the next level. But when you're hiding, you're protecting yourself from being seen, basically. And it could just be from fear. These are not the same things, Now, let me say this real carefully. Some people say, I'm just an introvert. And although that might be true, honest introversion is just about your energy being protected, right? And you need space to recharge that alone. You're more selective of those people that you want to be around because energy is sacred to you. And you don't need constant static and noise distracting you, right? It breaks you down. That's actually healthier than you think. But then here's the second part to that. Avoidance. Avoidance is different. Avoidance would say, I don't want to feel like being exposed today, right? And sometimes we mix the two up because it sounds better to say, I'm protecting my peace right now than to say the truth that you really just want to protect your ego in the moment. And we don't want to look inexperienced to anyone. That's not what we're doing. Who wants to fail publicly? No one. We don't want to be seen trying to do something. We want to be seen knowing what we're doing. So wintertime is like that protection for the beginning stage, But in the spring, that's going to expose if you grew or not. The exposure, it makes you feel vulnerable. It does. But that vulnerability is not your danger zone, okay? It's your development space for real. Not every uncomfortable room is bad energy to be around. Sometimes it's the area that you can stretch. You have space. Your mind can expand. And that's sometimes in the same space where you can meet the other iron that will sharpen you. For me personally, though, if I'm around right energy, the good energy, I could go on for hours. Like a real good conversation, one of those conversations that help you get to those ideas that might have been locked in your head. And, you start flowing. And there's something about alignment that creates real bonds. The second something starts to shift in that energy, once you feel that, you disconnect. And that's some real type of awareness for real. But here's when maturity will come in and kick in. It's sometimes it feels like bad energy, but that could just be the new challenge developing, right? And it's just being the least polished at the time because that's not your focus. Maybe that's just the beginning part of you trying to stretch out stretch out of your soil. Last episode, I remember we talked about the world feeling gray, right? And when you feel overstimulated and things start to feel heavy around you, and sometimes what we call our winter is really just a burnout season. You know, we pull back because everything just felt too loud and we didn't have the system to run everything smoothly, and it deterred us from pushing forward, right? That makes a lot of sense. But rest and retreat aren't the same things, right? Rest will restore the energy that you need to keep going. Retreating just hides the spark that you own. And both might feel similar in delivery, but only one of those really builds that needed strength to keep pushing forward, to keep going. I've stayed quiet longer than I needed to once before. Not because I wasn't ready to hear my own voice, but because I was uncomfortable waiting for those right moments, right? I told myself that was me preparing and strategizing. And really, to be honest, I was just in hesitation, right? Procrastination is the biggest fake safety net. It only feels safe because nothing is on the line. But look, March is here now, right? Spring is on the horizon, whether you want it to be here or not. And nature is one thing that'll teach you something. It'll develop without negotiating time with anybody. It responds to the environment. And if you notice how trees don't stay underground forever, right? The roots are built in the darkness, and that bloom stage will create the visibility, right? You'll see the growth. And for some of us, we've done that internal work in the shadow, right? We built discipline. We even grown some stronger awareness. When we grew the awareness, we put structure to our mindsets. Once we do that, our talents can't stay underground. Okay? You can't grow in private forever after that. At some point, your growth needs to be seen. It's not for the validation purposes, it's for accountability for yourself. It's proof. It's reflection that will turn into more movement, Healing turns into that re-entry, that keep going phase, that push, until something happens. Exactly that. The real question then becomes, is this still a winter season for you? Or are you just comfortable waiting? We talked about love and discipline before, and growth requires the same type of discipline. Spring is putting that discipline in motion. You get to see yourself in action. All of the things you learned and built up until this point get put to use. You don't have to wait for that perfection. You just have to move because it's time for you to reach your light. Okay, it's time to push through the soil of your life. And here's what I want you to try this week. And I want you to keep it simple. Just change one of your environments, okay? Just one. Work somewhere different, maybe outside, since the weather's breaking. It's a perfect time to sit in the sun and absorb that vitamin D. And, just step outside of your usual patterns. Sometimes those aren't working, and that's just a comfort zone, okay? Initiate one of the things that you've been delaying to do for a long time. That could be a phone call. That could be just making that post that you've been holding in your drafts. An uncomfortable step that you've been trying to make. You can adjust your posture too. Keep your head up. Poke your chest out. Show people that you have that confidence for real. Maybe even start wearing brighter clothes right now. Get out of the black season, the browns, the fall colors. All right? And not just physically, but in your mind too, mentally too. Go outside and take your headphones off for a while. Listen to nature around you. Listen to how it resets naturally, right? Because spring isn't like an explosion right away. The transitions are slow, but it moves you forward. You can't bloom on the ground forever, y'all. You already been through enough pressure. The growth is in you. It just needs a little motion. You can't keep calling that safety your preparation, okay? Soon that's just gonna turn into a whole nother weighted on season. You don't need to become someone new this month, but maybe it's time to become visible this month, right? Reset was never meant to be a permanent thing, right? It's just a recalibration. If recalibration becomes your identity, you'll never relaunch. You'll never keep going. You'll never start at all. If you've already done that internal work though, then this might be your season. This is your moment to step into who you've been working on for so long. And you don't have to do it loudly. You don't have to boast about it. You don't have to be dramatic, but intentional this time. That's all. So if this episode made you think, I want you to follow me on all platforms and subscribe to the YouTube, of course, and leave a comment and a review for me. Share this to someone else that might be stuck in a winter season just a little bit too long. This is Word Forward, y'all. I'll see you on the next one.